Hi, MSL here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my preliminary thoughts on the ICAG pre-scene material. The Institute released this just yesterday. So these are my initial thoughts after going through the pre-scene. Quick structure. I'm going to walk you through a summary of the case briefly. We'll do an industry and company overview briefly as well. I'll touch on some key strategic initiatives mentioned in the pre-scene material. We'll touch on governance, a little PESTEL analysis from my perspective once again. We'll look at some SWOT analysis, try and play around with Porter's 5 forces, maybe do some stakeholder analysis with the Mendelow's matrix, and then I'll leave you with 10 strategic questions that should be on your mind as you prepare for the exam. We'll try and break this video down into chapters so you can just skip to whichever part interests you the most. I'd also invite you, if you want to join, would have a much more detailed strategy session for this paper during our intervention program. So on the 2nd of July, which is Wednesday, and on the 3rd of July, which is a Thursday, would have a 2-day pre-scene bootcamp session as part of our intervention and crash course program. It'll be 2 full days going through the pre-scene, discussing all relevant areas and making sure students are ready for the exam. But this, like I said when I started, is to share my initial thoughts. So what is the case company about? The company is called RideGo Ghana, as I'm sure you are already familiar with. So this material, like I said, is going to provide a comprehensive analysis, at least initially, of RG. I'll be calling them RG going forward, yeah? Okay, now they are a subsidiary of a global ride-hailing brand, which was established in the year 2017. So they are quite new, right? They are not one of the very old companies that are really established in the industry. So they operate in the dynamic African transport market, and they have built a substantial user and driver base while facing fierce competition. So it's a very competitive industry. That's one of the first takeaway points, right? They operate in a very, very, very competitive market. They are currently at a strategic crossroads and they are focusing on future growth. They want to launch 2 very innovative products. The first is called the RideGo EV and RideGo Moto, which I'll discuss in some detail shortly. So this should set the tone. We can move strictly to the summary of the case. This is not going to read the case, or the purpose of this session is not to read the case word for word with you. We'll do that during the detailed strategy bootcamp sessions I mentioned when I started. This is just to give you, like I said, my initial thoughts. So to summarize the case, if I were asked to do this on a 1-page document, what will I do? What would I say? Essentially, this pre-scene material positions RideGo, or RG, a subsidiary of a global ride-hailing brand, like I said, established in 2017, so fairly new, within the dynamic and rapidly expanding African transport market. So 2 things: dynamic, rapidly expanding, right? It's a growing market. We can't call it a new market. It's been around for quite a while, but you cannot take away from the fact that the market is continually growing. This case also details the evolution of the ride-hailing industry from its global origins to its adaptation in Africa. So we've seen in the pre-scene that the global ride-hailing market has been growing for a while now, quite in its new stage in Africa, but more established outside the continent. One thing that has been highlighted is the fierce competition from players like Bolt, Uber, and Yango. And thankfully, this is a case I'm sure everyone can relate with, right? Because at one point or the other in your life, I'm sure you've taken a ride with Bolt, Uber, or Yango. So this is a very, very close to home case, which everybody can really practically relate to it. So RG has achieved significant growth in Ghana. They've built a substantial user and driver base by offering a range of services from standard rides to food delivery. So again, let's remember, they have grown their portfolio of offerings, right? They are not just a basic ride-hailing company. As we'll realize shortly, this makes for interesting portfolio analysis, right? They've got a lot of services which make up their revenue mix. They are currently facing an evolving landscape. They are at a strategic crossroads. They are focusing on future growth through geographical expansion and innovative product launches. They are introducing the RideGo EV to cater to the demand for sustainable transport. So they want to bring electric vehicles. When I say EV, I mean electric vehicles. So this is in line with the global call for sustainable means of transportation to ensure that we save the environment. They also plan to introduce RideGo Moto to compete with our prevalent informal motorcycle sector. So we have our Okadas, right? I'm sure everybody's familiar with Okada in Ghana. So Okadas are these motorbikes which are currently unregulated, right? Largely, I mean, they want to enter that market as well. So you can see it's a very ambitious company, RG, and they want to also, as to find out shortly, do some form of what pragya and all of that, right? But basically, they are focused on RideGo Moto, right, which is to compete with the informal motorcycle taxi sector. The case also talks about their governance structure. Obviously, this exam has 20 marks dedicated to corporate governance. So it's an area you have to understand, right? Which is designed to manage the growth and sets the stage for strategic decisions regarding competition, regulation, profitability, and sustainable expansion. So again, it's a very interesting case. I'm going to touch basically next on the industry and the company overview. So I'll start with the industry overview, where I would notice that this industry began in the late 2000s. And this was pioneered by companies like Uber. So Uber is having what we call the first mover advantage, pretty much largely, right? And when we say first mover advantage, is the kind of strategic benefits, the kind of competitive advantage you enjoy because you literally were one of the first names in the industry, right? So Uber kind of revolutionized urban transport with an app-based platform. So Uber was one of the first to say, okay, you can actually pick your smartphone, order for a ride, and a driver shows up at your destination or your location and takes you to where you want to go, your destination, right? So it quickly saw the rise of competitors like Lyft. We saw Ola come on. And just like any industry anywhere in the world, once there is an increase in demand for the service, you'd find out that a lot more companies will try to enter the market. I'll touch a lot more on this when we get to Porter's five forces, right? What are the key trends in this case? The sector has diversified into food delivery, that is Uber Eats, and then freight services. Very important. These companies realize that, hold on a second, we do not only have to rely on the customers booking rides from Accra to Medina, right? We could actually use our platform to deliver food. So this time around, they connect you to restaurants who list on the app. Then if you want to buy fried rice with grilled chicken, you go on the app, you order, right? And then they bring this to you, okay? There's a growing emphasis on sustainability. Very important. We are in 2025, and it's expected in every exam that you should have sustainability at the back of your mind. Again, don't forget that the current ICA syllabus, which is from 2024 to 2029, has a big focus on sustainability, right? So it's no surprise that this case gives us so many hints of sustainability. With the integration of EVs and green mobility solutions, then technology like AI and machine learning is also used to optimize what routing and to predict demand. So tech is a big deal in this case because the drivers would want to find the fastest route to get to a particular destination, right? So AI is going to help to say, okay, if you use this route, you're going to take you 30 minutes. If you take this path, it will take you 45 minutes. Then it kind of suggests the best for the driver, right? And then it's also going to help with predicting demand. Which areas would you find more customers? And it kind of lets drivers know where they should be at each point in time, okay? And this helps with the internal matching system where the ride-hailing companies can say, okay, this customer is requesting from Cantonment. There are 5 drivers in Cantonment. Let's match to the closest driver, right? They do all of these things and get us to where we are going. Then the African market, basically, the pre-scene has told us it's a very attractive market. No wonder they are all entering the African market, all these ride-hailing companies, due to rapid urbanization, right? So many people are leaving the rural areas and coming to the urban areas. And this has made the demand for convenient transport, as I like to call it, even more important. There's also growing internet connectivity. Almost everybody uses a smartphone today, and you can download an app on Play Store, on App Store, right? So it's quite easy for this to be a booming market. Uber entered Ghana largely in 2013, followed by competitors like Bolt. Bolt used aggressive pricing to win market share, right? As of today, they are the leading, if not the second lead, second in Ghana, right? It's between Bolt and Uber. They control the market largely. The market was valued according to the pre-scene at $2.53 billion in 2025, and it's projected to grow at a CAGR or compound annual growth rate of 4.5% by 2030, right? Key players include Yango, Bolt, Uber, InDrive, Gozem, and let me add Shatawale's Shaxi, right? Great. So this is a very interesting pre-scene as we've seen so far. Let's now touch on the company itself, right? RG. In terms of their history, like I said when I started, they launched in Accra in 2017. Currently, they've expanded to Kumasi, to Takrade, and to Cape Coast. And obviously, there are plans to expand to more cities as part of their expansion agenda. By 2020, they had over 600,000 passengers and over 4,000 drivers. For a fairly new company, this is some impressive growth, we must say, right? What are their core values? Their core values are innovation, safety, customer focus, empowerment, and sustainability. Obviously, safety should be very important. You are transporting people across cities, right? Or between or within cities. It's very important that you prioritize their safety. And obviously, it's a customer-centric business, so you have to focus on the customer. Innovation, because you are in the technology space, your app has to keep getting better, right? Your competitors are bringing new products, new features on their app, so innovation is key. Empowerment is important. You have a lot of stakeholder groups to manage, and it's important to keep them at the forefront. And sustainability, obviously. The world is moving towards electrification. The world is moving away from fossil fuel-based transport. The world is moving away from internal combustion engine vehicles. So it's important that we also have this sustainability focus at the back of our minds. In terms of mission and vision, their mission is to redefine urban transport in Ghana with innovative and affordable solutions. So this gives us an idea that they are affordability driven. Would look at that into a lot more detail. Their vision is to be the premier ride-hailing service in Ghana and West Africa. So they have their sights not just set on the Ghanaian market, they want to capture the sub-region as well, right? And obviously that kind of suggests they have plans of expanding. So it means over here, your internationalization strategies in the syllabus will be very important because you need to know what are the options available if a company decides to move outside Ghana. In terms of tech and drivers, RG users, or they currently use a robust mobile app. Their users have access to this for passengers and their drivers. This empowers the drivers through a flexible gig economy model, a driver rewards program, and partnership with financial institutions to forward vehicle loans. So think about it this way. The company cares about its drivers and its passengers. So a flexible gig economy model means that a driver can actually on their smartphone have the Uber driver app, the Bolt driver app, the RG driver app, the Shaxi driver app. So whichever one gets you a ride, you just log on and then you drop the customer, right? So it gives the drivers flexibility to earn more. RG also has a drivers rewards program. Obviously, this is to incentivize the drivers to drive with RG a lot more. And then they offer some partnerships with banks for people to get car loans to buy cars, right, as part of their support to their stakeholders. In terms of their service portfolio, like I said when I started, they have a very diversified portfolio. So currently, roughly 45%, that is almost half of their portfolio, comes from this, which is the RGX, the RideGoX. These are standard rides, right? Standard rides, normal size cars. So you could think of your small cars, the Vitz, the Yaris, right? Those small cars, right? Which they would use Picantos, right? To transport passengers. Then they've got their RideGo XL, which makes up roughly 18% of their portfolio or their revenue share. Now, these are slightly larger vehicles for groups, right? So you could think of maybe even minibuses to an extent, right? If groups are traveling or groups need a bigger car, maybe larger SUVs like the Escalade, maybe like a Toyota Sequoia, big cars that maybe groups of people can use to travel around, makes up almost 20% of their revenue. Then they've got the RideGo Pool, which are shared rides for 15% of revenue. So this is where, even in Ghana currently, we have Uber and Bolt offering this. You can actually order a ride and say you want to share with someone. So they pick up other people going on the same direction as you, right? And then you join them. The fare is lower because you share the cost, right? Then 10% of the revenue comes from RideGo Business. This is mainly for corporate clients. So maybe companies in the corporate industry would want to have an agreement with them to offer specified transport services for, let's say, their employees, right? So this, you can see they've diversified beyond just B2C, which is business to consumer, but they are doing even now B2B, right? So this is their B2B offering, business to business, yeah. Then they've also got RideGoEats food delivery, currently in its nascent stage, 6% of revenue. This is food delivery. So think of, in Ghana, we have Bolt Food, right? As an example, Bolt Food currently dominates the Ghanaian food delivery market largely because we saw the exit of some of the very big players in the previous years, right? So these are all very important things to look at. Okay, then we've got RideGoDelivery, package delivery at 4% of revenue. It's interesting to know that for package delivery, Yango in Ghana is kind of like the market delivery, like the market leader, right? Both food is doing great. Yango delivery kind of is also catching that part of the market. But again, we can see RG is trying to also gain a foothold in this market as well. Then they've also got Earning with RideGo, which is 2% of their revenue. So it's a driver platform, right, where drivers are able to earn additional income from collaborating or working on this platform, right? So in terms of strategic initiatives, new products, broadly, if I were to touch on two very key things, we would have the RideGo EV and the RideGo Motor. So RideGo EV, like I mentioned when I started, is an electric vehicle service to address the growing demand for sustainable, eco-friendly transport and to reduce urban pollution. So this is in line with Ghana's global trends and environmental goals. But again, the question is, can the Ghanaian economy, can the Ghanaian current landscape provide enough electricity to charge all of these EVs? Yes, we've got the infrastructure, but we need to do a lot more to make businesses ready or to make people ready to adopt EVs on a larger scale. But yeah, obviously, RG wants to go into this space and obviously try and get an early foothold in the industry, right? Then we've got RideGo Moto. Now, for here, they want to actually compete directly with the popular but unregulated informal Okada and Pragia sectors. The idea, according to RG, is you take your RG mobile app, you open the app, and instead of choosing like a four-wheel car, like a Toyota Corolla, you can actually choose a bike, okay? So they want to offer a safer, regulated, and more reliable alternative for quick, short distance travel. And I'm sure all of us can relate. The fastest way to get through town in Ghana when there's heavy traffic is using a bike, because the bikes can maneuver their way through traffic and all, right? So RG Moto is supposed to be one of their products, which they expect to be a groundbreaking one in Ghana. Then in terms of their governance structure, like I said, which makes corporate governance super important. They've got a 3-tiered governance structure to ensure accountability and efficient decision making. So the board of directors sits at the top. This is the highest level, obviously, responsible for strategic direction. They've got a chairperson, a CEO, a CFO, a CTO, a CMO, and some non-execs or independent directors. Again, do a lot more detailed discussion of the governance structure during our 2-day strategy session, right? They've also got functional management. They oversee key departments like operations, tech, marketing, finance, HR, CSR, and these are led by C-suite executives and then directors. Then they've got operational management. These guys manage their day-to-day activities like what? Fleet managers, driver relations managers, customer support managers, right? Again, in a business of this nature, you'd need as many operational roles as possible because don't forget, it's a very dicey business. The drivers have to be satisfied, the customers have to be satisfied. So you need specific people to manage all of these competing stakeholders. And I'll touch on stakeholders shortly, right? Now, in terms of governance, like I said, remember your exam is going to offer you 20 marks just for demonstrating your understanding of governance. There are so many concepts we need to understand. For example, if you take your case study syllabus, there are things like the OECD governance principles. We've got the concept of good governance. We've also got the Ghana governance aspect. So, do they have the necessary board committees, right? Do they have the necessary separation of roles at the board level, right? For example, are the committees appropriately constituted based on best practices for corporate governance? Okay. Do they have appropriate internal controls when it comes to governance? So there are so many questions we could ask, right? But at least they give us an idea of the governance structure of this company. Then we can go into one very popular model, which is called the PESTEL analysis. Again, let me quickly disclaim, this is my opinion. Okay, it does not represent in any way what the institute would say PESTEL should be. But from my detailed analysis of the pre-scene, I think these are the factors I will talk about under typical PESTEL analysis. So let's start with the political factors. So generally, we can say the regulatory landscape for ride hailing in Africa is evolving, with some countries implementing laws to standardize the sector. So we are seeing what? Increased regulation, largely, right? Then governments in countries like Kenya and Nigeria struggle to balance the interests of the ride hailing firms and traditional taxi operators. You see, one thing you notice in Ghana even is that taxi drivers don't like the Bolt and Uber guys because they are like, because of the emergence and the growth of ride hailing businesses, people are less likely to use taxis. And it makes sense, right? If you are home, you are much more likely to pick your smartphone, open the Uber, Bolt, or now the RG app, and then order for a ride than walk all the way to the roadside, especially if you live far from the main road, right? To go and stand there and look for a taxi, you see. So government in some of these countries are struggling to balance the competing interest of the ride-hailing firms and the traditional taxi businesses. Then the informal Okada and Pragya industry in Ghana has faced minimal regulation. We've seen different suggestions come up in recent elections, right? Whereas different political parties, I'm not going to name any, have spoken about what? Even trying to regulate this industry. This presents an opportunity and a potential future regulatory challenge for RG. Because what if RG enters the motorbike space and then there's a significant regulatory hurdle they have to go through? As at now, in Ghana, there is some form of green light, but let's not forget that in areas like this where the law is kind of having gray areas, it's very important we understand that there could be potential political challenges. Then RG's legal advisors, they're supposed to ensure compliance with local and international standards. Again, they are not just in the Ghanaian market. You are dealing with a multiplicity of different laws across different jurisdictions. So it's very important that you understand the dynamics and the interrelations between these different competing laws, so to speak. So that is P for PESTEL. Let's look at E, which is the economic factors. Now, in terms of the economic factors, Africa's middle class is expanding according to the pre-scene, with projections of a 50% rise in consumers by 2030, which will increase demand for convenient transport. Now, the younger generation will be more likely to want to order a ride on their mobile phones than to go and stand by the roadside and pick a trotro or a traditional taxi. Okay, so we are expecting to see demand, right? But it's mainly because of what? the middle class, which is why it's under the economic factors, right? The middle class will be able to afford this. Don't forget that Ghana has quite a large lower income class or a poor class, and we've got a very rich guys. The very rich class hardly would use these. They've got their own cars, you see. So the focus here is on the growing purchasing power of the middle class. We've also seen rising disposable incomes and the growing GDP per capita in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, which make ride-hailing services more affordable. So if we can extrapolate, we can say, well, if we see rising disposable incomes in Ghana, and if there's growing GDP per capita, then it means people will be able to afford more of these services and have a bigger share of wallets going towards spending boost driver supply. Again, don't forget that financial institutions financing largely will be driven by broader macroeconomic factors like the lending rate. So the Bank of Ghana's monetary policy rate or the base rate or the lending rate plays a key role. If this goes high, interest rates will go high. It will make borrowing more expensive and fewer people will be able to afford car loans to buy the cars, right? So it's important we understand the fact that the economy broadly affects how successful this will be. Then intense competition puts pressure on the profitability of companies in the sector because of the way the economy is, exchange rates are moving crazily, right? And the fact that people are trying to undercut each other, give drivers better commissions, and all, there's going to be intense competition, which would then push down or have a pressure effect on the profitability of these companies, right? So that is about it. Let's go to social factors. Basically, the biggest one for me is urbanization, right? Well, we've said Africa has one of the world's fastest urbanization rates, increasing the demand for transport in the dense cities. So because people are moving more from the rural areas to the urban areas, it is even much more likely that your customer base, that is those who typically order a ride on the RG app, would also increase, right? So urbanization, whilst it grows, can also be a big, big thing for us to look at. Then, still on social, we've got a young population. I mentioned this earlier. The continent of Africa has the world's youngest population, approximately, with over 60% being under 25, based on information from the case, which is a tech-savvy demographic inclined to adopt ride-hailing services. So you have a lot more people much more likely to use ride-hailing services. I'm sure most of us, our parents and our grandparents, don't even know how to use Uber or Bolt. Majority of our very old parents and grandparents, right? So if you have a very youthful population, it augurs well for higher demand for ride-hailing service. And then when it comes to the T in technology, we are looking at mobile adoption, right? So there is a widespread smartphone adoption and increasing mobile internet penetration. Almost everybody has a smartphone with access to WhatsApp, with access to TikTok, right? So you can easily download these apps on your devices, the RG mobile app, the Uber app, the Bolt app, to be able to order a ride. So the more people have access to smartphones and internet connectivity, the better it is. Now, don't forget that the government, through the NCA, right, has got a big, big, big role to ensure that we offer a lot more internet. So as Ghana seeks to move eventually to 5G, right? 5G will mean faster internet. Then it means no matter where you are, if you've got service, you can order for your ride easily. So this means that in areas with poor internet connectivity, it'll be very difficult for people to order right. So these are fundamental drivers for the industry. Then artificial intelligence and GPS, very important. So GPS tracking helps you to accurately position yourself on a map. So basically it tells you are currently here, you are moving from this place to this place, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but on Google Maps currently, when you are driving, Google Maps is able to pick up the fact that you are driving. And from what I've seen, even kind of estimate the speed at which you are going at. And this is like in its very nascent stages. So as these technologies get better, we can use a lot more GPS tracking, AI, and machine learning to optimize routing, predict demand, and enhance customer safety. So these are the technological factors. Let's look at the environmental and legal factors. So for environmental factors, again, don't forget sustainability is at the forefront of our discussion here. So there's a growing emphasis on sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint of transport. We are trying to make sure that we cut down as much as possible our carbon footprint. We try to reduce our emissions. So that is why there's an increasing push towards what non-fuel vehicles. So we are trying to do away with the internal combustion engine vehicles and have a lot more of what plug-in electric or maybe plug-in hybrid models. These are types that RG can consider. So in terms of even the EVs, they've got different types. Are they going to do the pure hybrid vehicles? Are they going to do pure electric or a blend of the two, right? So they are focusing on sustainability through electrification. RG is also actively exploring green options, like I said. They're encouraging shared rides. What are shared rides? Instead of you alone taking the ride from, let's say, Cantonment to Dansoman, if you have 3 other people going the same way, the same direction, why not share a ride with them to cut down what on fuel consumption and pollution in that regard? So generally here, RG's app kind of suggests that they're going to suggest to the customer that, hey, on your same direction that you are going are 2 other people. Would you like to share a ride with them? If you want to, you say yes, and it kind of connects or hooks the 3 of you up, and then you guys can head towards the same direction. Then they are also going to launch RG EV, like I said, to offer a much greener alternative and to reduce urban pollution. Then Ghana's commitment to the Paris Agreement creates a favorable environment for eco-friendly initiatives. So in terms of, this can link to the regulatory environment, right? In terms of even the general regulatory landscape, the government is in support of what? Sustainability related initiatives. So it means RG is not likely to face any significant hurdles here when they decide to roll out their EV product offering. In terms of L, which is the last PESTEL factor or the legal factors, the ride-hailing companies face regulatory scrutiny regarding labor practices, driver compensation, and then passenger safety, right? So it's important. We've seen and heard of cases in Ghana where passengers were attacked in the car. Some people leave their valuables in the car, and the drivers sometimes don't return them, sometimes they return them, right? All of these things, we need to make sure there are adequate laws, adequate regulations in place to ensure people are broadly safe, not just the passengers, but their belongings. And then drivers should be fairly compensated for the work they do, right? So would there be a broader regulatory regime regarding driver compensation? If you look at the global cases like the Uber case in UK not too long ago, you'd notice that the ruling of the court was generally that the drivers are generally, some of them will say they are employees, some of them will say they are contractors, right? This case has been going back and forth in different jurisdictions. So it's important to realize, well, Ghana also take that direction by saying that the drivers on these apps actually employees as opposed to contractors. Don't forget that calling somebody an employee has significant implications for the company. A contractor is just someone who works on your platform and is compensated for the hours they work, right? So if the direction of how Ghana does labor law regarding these ride-hailing services change, then don't forget that this will have a big, big impact, even from a cost standpoint, because then if you treat them as employees, right, it could be a big, big, big blow to their P&L when it comes to compensation. RG must also comply with local regulations, labor laws, and contracts in Ghana and other potential countries. So obviously they are in business. They are very good, growing dynamic business. There's a need to sign contracts and have a legal team oversee this to ensure compliance with laws. Again, don't forget the negative PR that will come from not complying with laws. So it's important that they comply with laws. The launch of RG Motor, like I said, involves moving into a space currently dominated by the informal sector. We currently have the Okada guys and the Pragya guys, right? Who the Pragyas are, if you know the 3-wheelers, right? The 3-wheeler vehicles. Now, imagine they hear there's a new company with an app where the Okada guys can also onboard themselves, and then what? People will order. Now, this would work. Maybe RG could look at onboarding the current Okada and Pragya guys directly to the app, as opposed to trying to compete with them directly, right? But again, once this happens, you can almost bet that this will trigger new regulations for safety and operations. The government will start to care. Once RG launches their RG Moto, you can almost bet that government will begin to care a lot, and we'll probably see some form of regulation rollout for this currently largely unregulated space. Okay. So that is it for PESTEL analysis. We could now move to our SWOT analysis. SWOT basically means your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The S and W for SWOT and the S and W, strengths, weaknesses, basically are internal factors, internal to the company. O and T, opportunities and threats, are external in the external environment. So let's look at the strengths. Regarding the strengths from the precinct, what I have gathered is they've got an established brand and market position. So they are part of a renowned international brand with a strong foothold in Ghana. Like I said, over 600,000 passengers and counting, and 4,000 drivers by the year 2020. This is a strength, right? They are not a baby in the industry, clearly. So they've got some form of market positioning, right? They've also got a diverse service portfolio. I showed you their revenue mix, right? If you remember, we touched on this here, right? It is a strength. They've got a lot going on. You see, it's a risk for a business if you rely largely on just one particular revenue stream. It is not the case for RG. RG currently has a diversified revenue portfolio or revenue mix. So that is also a strength for them. So like we said, they offer a wide range of services, which we have said are going to create multiple revenue streams for them. They've also got an advanced tech platform. So they utilize a robust mobile app, which has features like real-time tracking. You can pay in the app. It leverages data analytics and machine learning for efficiency. So it is a strength. They've built a great, remarkable, tremendous app. And that is one strength which can give them a competitive advantage. Then they've also got a driver empowerment model, where they have strong driver networks supported by a rewards program and partnerships for vehicle financing, which will help attract and retain drivers. If drivers hear, oh, if you drive with RG, they could help you get a bank loan to get, or a car loan, right, to get a car. Yeah, it could incentivize drivers to come. So it's a strength which they have to capitalize on in the industry, right? Then their commitment to CSR and sustainability is a strength. They are actively engaged in community initiatives and promoting green transport, and this enhances brand image. Don't forget that in sustainability, one important thing is how you appear to be sustainable. And here they are doing great regarding the image and positioning, right? So these are some strengths basically I came up with. Then weaknesses. Okay. In terms of weaknesses, again, internal factor, there's high revenue concentration. Like we saw, 45% of their revenue, close to a half, comes from a single service, RGX. This means there's a big revenue risk, right? If the RGX market or their demand from that service falls, it means close to half of their revenue will be impacted. So if you do a little sensitivity analysis, you can tell that it's great to have a lot of revenue streams, but you are almost concentrated, almost half in just one revenue line, right? So they may have to look at diversifying more. Currently, there's a dependence on the gig economy model. So while this is flexible, drivers can jump on different apps and all. Don't forget that driver satisfaction, driver churn or turnover, and potential legal dispute over employment status can also be a big weakness. But then it's true, right? Currently, drivers can move to different platforms to drive. So their over-reliance on this current gig economy model leaves them at the mercy of the drivers. Okay. Then there's also profitability pressure. The case mentions that intense competition in the sector puts pressure on profitability. So obviously it means that from the financial perspective, RG will be under significant pressure to meet profit targets set by their shareholders, right? Then there's a complexity of diversification. So managing diverse operations like food delivery and package delivery requires different logistical capability compared to ride hailing. And that's true. Transporting human beings from location A to location B is never the same as transporting food from location restaurant A to house B. And it's not the same as transporting a package. Let me give you examples. There are times I've bought food from these, like Bolt food. The food gets here, and then because of the riders handling on the road, maybe the food has poured into the packaging or something is messed up with the packaging. Imagine you are delivering something which is glass through a package delivery company. And then I have not experienced this yet, right? And then maybe it's glass is fragile. It gets to your destination, is broken. What do? You see, so there is some complexity. RG should remember that the kind of success they have with customer transportation will never be the same as the kind of complexities they'll face when they look at other kinds of deliverables. Let's come to the external environment and the opportunities and threats from the case, right? So regarding this, let's look at the opportunities and threats, okay? All right, so here, we've got market growth and expansion. Okay, that's the first one. It's an opportunity for RG. The African ride-hailing market is projected to grow significantly. RG has clear plans to expand into smaller towns, rural areas, and even the neighboring West African countries. Yes, it is an opportunity they can capitalize on. Number one, it gives them a bigger customer base. They get to enjoy a bigger market share from the continental pool available in Africa, right? And if they move into other rural areas and smaller towns, which maybe the big players may not be there yet, it gives them the first mover advantage. Then there's an opportunity in formalizing the informal sector. So the currently massive unregulated Okada and Pragya market in Ghana presents a big opportunity for RG to capture market share by offering a safer, more reliable service. Then there's a growing demand for green transport. So the increasing environmental awareness and government support for sustainability creates a ripe market for their EV service. So this is something that should be successful when launched. Then we've got favorable demographics from the social factor we discussed under PESTEL. There's a young, urbanizing, and tech-savvy population. This is a ready market who is almost ready at the moment to use your products and your offerings. What are the threats? Regarding threats, there's intense competition. They face fierce competition from established global and local players like Bolt, Yango, Uber, some of whom use aggressive pricing strategies. So some may decide to use what Porter calls the cost leadership strategy to try to be the lowest cost offer in the market. And this could force there to what we call a price war. Once there's a price war, it's a literal race to the bottom where everybody tries to be the cheapest in the market. So RG should know who they are and not engage in any price war, which may already cut further into their profitability. Then there are also regulatory risks. The evolving and uncertain regulatory landscape in Africa could lead to restrictive measures affecting operations and costs, right? There's also market saturation. In major urban centers, the market may become saturated, leading to price wars, like I said, and reduced profitability. We are going to see a lot more companies enter the industry. Then there's a threat of substitutes. Okay, strong competition from traditional taxi is there. Public transport trotro is there, and a deeply entrenched informal Okada is also there. Then there are your competitors as well: Bolt, Uber, Yango, Shagzy, all of the rest. You see, so it's a big threat of substitutes that you need to also address. So this is a basic SWOT analysis, which should guide your further analysis of the case. In terms of Porter's 5 forces, which again looks at the external environment largely and the competitive dynamics, let's start with the threat of new entrants. In my opinion, this is medium, right? It's not low, it is not too high. The threat, there's a big technology barrier, which is what? Developing an app. So not everybody can just do this, right? This barrier is lower than in the past because now we've got AI. People can actually use AI to develop apps. There's something called vibe coding, right? So it's easier to build an app today than it was maybe 5 years ago. And new business models can facilitate entry, all right? For example, there's one competitor called InDrive. They have a zero commission policy. Currently, the way it works is these companies take a commission from each ride from the driver. If a competitor is doing a zero commission policy, it's going to be a big blow in terms of managing the dynamics. However, new entrants also face significant barriers, such as building a large network of drivers and passengers. It will be very difficult. Even if you can build the app, where would you get your drivers from and your passengers from, right? Establishing the brand trust and competing with the marketing budgets of the established players in the industry. So the threat of new entrants, if you ask me, is quite in the middle there somewhere. Bargaining power of buyers is super high. Buyers here being the passengers. See, on your phone, nobody stops you or restricts you from the number of apps you can download. You can download Bolt, Uber, Yango, Shagzy, RG. So we've got a high bargaining power. The passengers have access to multiple ride-hailing apps. This makes the switching cost virtually zero. In fact, today, I'm sure you listening, you can attest to the fact that on your phone, you can actually order, and I've seen people do, I think I've done it myself even. You can order Bolt, order Uber, and see who is coming faster. Then you go with them and cancel the other one, right? So bargaining power is very, very high. Customers have the choice here. Bargaining power of suppliers, in my view, is quite medium. So generally, drivers have lower bargaining power, again, because there are so many drivers as well who may want to work on these platforms. However, as a collective group, their power can increase. So if the drivers come together to form some form of a union or a cooperative, they may have bigger bargaining power to push their demands further. Okay, drivers can also easily switch between the platforms, what we call the multi-homing, right? They can move from both, go here to Uber, come to RG, go to Yango, go to Shagzy to see where they'll make more money, maximize their earnings, and then get better rights, right? Then the threat of substitute is very high. Generally, there are numerous substitutes for ride-hailing services, as you can see. It's not even just ride-hailing, transportation in general. So many transport alternatives. There's bike, there's Uber, there's Yango, there's Shagzy, there's RG from the precinct, there's Trotro, there's traditional taxi, and there's your leg. You can walk, right? So when it comes to transportation, the threat of substitute is very high, very, very high. People can switch to any form of transport they so desire. In fact, there's air transport when you are going domestically to other parts of the country. You've got the buses and all of that. Intensity of rivalry is very high from the pre-scene. The market is crowded with several major international competitors, and this makes it very, very, very competitive for this company. So this is a very basic overview of Porter's 5 forces, which I think we should all understand, right? Let's look at key stakeholder analysis. And I chose the Mendelow stakeholder matrix for this. Don't forget it breaks your stakeholders into 4 quadrants or 4 segments based on their power and interest. So it's called the power interest matrix. So let's start with stakeholders that I think have high power and high interest. Basically, the board of directors and senior management, they've got high power. They've also got high interest. So there are a key stakeholder we have to manage carefully. They're a key stakeholder, right? Shareholders are obviously the owners. So here, the parent company, they are a very important stakeholder you must manage carefully. Your competitors, Bolt, Yango, Uber, the rest, they are all key stakeholders. They've got high power because of the competition dynamics, and they've got high interest because if you do well, probably means you're going to do less well, right? So these are some key stakeholders that I will put in the high power, high interest matrix. Then we've got those who are high power but low interest. For these guys, they've got power, but they're not too interested in your operations. So keep them satisfied. So here I'll put the government and regulators here. Government has the power to regulate industries, right? Government, you must make sure you comply with all regulatory obligations. Failure to do so could lead to big, 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 big trouble for you, right? Financial institutions have got high power, but quite low interest because they care about your ability to pay back largely, right? So if you partner with the bank has power because they can discontinue the partnership with you. And they've got low interest because really it's just a loan they are giving to you, right? So you need to keep your bank satisfied, bring credit-worthy drivers, okay, who can pay back the loan. Then those in the low power, high interest matrix, where you have to keep them informed, okay? These are the drivers. But remember, for drivers, it's individually that they have low power, but collectively they have high power. So here I'm putting drivers in this quadrant because of the fact that I'm saying, okay, they are individual drivers, right? An individual driver cannot move the needle. But if they come together and they decide to boycott your service, yes, then they've got high power. So here it depends on how you see drivers, right? Passengers or customers, they've also got low power, but don't forget that the customer can just decide not to use your service, right? Customers cannot really, in terms of what a stakeholder perspective, say they have like high power. So keep them informed of new changes on your app, reductions in fares, discounts for trips and all. Local communities and NGOs, are also low power but high interest, right? Because they care about your social and environmental impact, youth employment, road safety. So they don't have power, but they have high interest. If they hear your platform is not safe, people will boycott your service and there will be a backlash on social media. Then low power, low interest, those you have to just exert minimum or minimal effort. The general public who are non-users, they don't use your services. They are just there. Don't stress too much with them. General suppliers, like those who bring you your office supplies, marketing agencies, these guys, minimal effort, keep them in check, right? They are not such a key stakeholder. So in cases of this nature, it's always important you always do the stakeholder analysis. You could also use what we call the position importance matrix, which is a second model for stakeholder analysis, which would be more relevant when you are trying to make a key decision. Like, for example, if we are to do the RG Moto or the RG EV, you can use the position importance model to analyze if you are going to face any challenges from your stakeholders rolling out that particular service. Then I'll end with my top 10 strategic questions you should have. Ask yourself these questions as you're analyzing simultaneously funding expansion and fending off intense competition. Keep this in mind, the profitability puzzle. Pre-Scene has said there's a downward pressure on profitability. How can they achieve sustainable profits while still funding expansion and fighting competition? Right. So this is a very important thing we should look at. The next question that should be top of mind for you. So this is one. The second should be RG Moto. Is it a strategic genius or a high stakes gamble? Right? Remember. So is launching RG Moto a viable strategy to capture the informal market, or does it expose RG to unacceptable safety and regulatory risks? If people take motorbikes and they don't use helmets and there's an accident and someone dies, right? There are so many things. So RG Moto, is it a strategic genius choice or a high stakes gamble? Look at the pros and cons of both. Then RGEV, what is the business case for that? Okay, is RGEV a core part of the future business model, or is it primarily for branding and CSR? Let's see from that angle. Are they truly introducing RGEV because they care about the environment, or it is more, let's appear to be the more environmentally focused company? So is it a branding or CSR thing, or is it something that they want to be part of their future strategy going forward? Right. So look at that as well. Then the fourth, I would call beyond the ride. Okay. So are the diversified services, RideGoEats, RideGoDelivery, are they strategic assets or are they a distraction from the core business? So for example, if you are a company like RG, okay, do you want to focus on transporting passengers, human beings, and do so well at that? Or you want to deliver food, deliver packages, also do corporate services, right? So is diversification the best for you now? This is for you to answer, right? Is it a strategic asset to the company, or will it distract them from their core business, which, don't forget, they started as what? Ride hailing, transporting humans. Then they need to build a defensible moat, okay? A moat is basically a sustainable competitive advantage which your competitors cannot easily copy. So how can RG create a sustainable competitive advantage that is not easily copied by their rivals like Bolt and Yango? Because think about it. If they create EVs, it should be quite easy for others to also roll out an EV revenue line. If they decide to enter the bike segment, anyone could also do that. In fact, food delivery, others are also doing it. You see, so it's important. Don't forget that last 2 years ago, Glovo left Ghana. Now, Glovo was into largely food and package delivery. Just that. They were not doing transportation of humans. So with the exit of Glovo from the Ghanaian market, don't forget there's an opportunity for people to capture a larger share of that market. But how do you build a defensible moat? Very important, right? The next is the driver dilemma. How can RG ensure that they have a loyal and motivated driver fleet when the drivers can easily switch to competing platforms? Think about this. What can they do? Should they give their drivers better commissions, right? Should they even offer zero commission for some days of the week? You see, so look at how and think about how we can also deal with a dilemma where drivers have so high bargaining power. The next one is the blueprint for expansion. What is the most logical and the most profitable strategy for RG's geographic expansion? They want to expand into smaller Ghanaian towns and neighboring countries. This needs strategic planning carefully. Should they do it? And if yes, how should they do it? Right? It's very important that we appreciate this. So think of all the models and all the market entry strategies. How should they enter new markets? Through a joint venture, through a wholly owned subsidiary? Should there be a franchise, right? Should they do licensing? So many different approaches, right? You have to think about this a lot. Then the next question that should be on your mind is the regulatory tightrope. They have to manage the evolving and uncertain regulatory landscape in Ghana and West Africa. The case repeatedly mentions the impact of government regulations and legal compliance. They have to navigate the regulatory tightrope. If not, they could be in big trouble. Then, if you were the CEO, this is a question I'm leaving for you. If you were the CEO, what would be your top 5 KPIs to measure the overall health and strategic success of RG over the next 3 years? I've given some examples on the next slide. I'll touch on that shortly, but try and come up with KPIs, right? If you are asked to use the balance scorecard, then you need to come up with non-financial KPIs as well, right? Out of the 4 balance scorecard perspectives. Then the final question should be on your mind is the governance challenge, which, like I said, corporate governance is for 20 marks, right? So is RG's current governance structure equipped to handle the complexity of multi-country operations and a highly diversified service portfolio? Are they ready as they are, or do we need to strengthen their governance a lot more? So regarding KPIs, let me just leave you with this. Again, please, these are just examples. You can come up with yours. So what are some KPIs RG could try to track? They could look at gross profit margin, right? Or their net profit margin. Remember, the case has highlighted the importance of profitability. So they may want to keep an eye on their profit. Is it getting better? Are your margins tightening through competition, right? Then you could also look at customer satisfaction. If you've used any of these ride-hailing apps, by the time you're done with your trip, you can rate the driver 4 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, 1 star, right? So try and track that to see how customers are satisfied with your app. This can let you know if you are doing things well or not. Then driver retention, right? You should look for a KPI, a way to see how you keep drivers active on the app. An easy way to do this probably is to say, okay, within a 24-hour period, how many hours do drivers actively drive? So give them incentives to keep them on your app. You can say, oh, if you're able to drive 5 days on our app, your 6th day will be commission free, something like that, right? Think of other ones. Then market share should be measured actively. You should find a way to track how much of the market share you currently hold. And then new users monthly. Find a way to track how many new people are signing onto your app, how many new people are downloading your app to become your customers. So this has been a very, very high level overview of the pre-scene. It's gone longer than I thought it would. Like I said at the beginning, you are invited to join our 2-day strategic case study pre-scene analysis as part of our ongoing intervention and crash course program. It is for 2 days. I'll leave the details in the comments and in the video description. We'll also add something as scrolling credits at the bottom of the video, which should give you an idea on how to register. So I hope this has been insightful. I would end here and wish you the very, very best of luck in your strategic case study exam. My name is MSL. Have a lovely day.